Hello everyone, welcome back. Again, thank you so much for the support. I really appreciate everyone watching my videos. I just wanted to dedicate this video today to some of the basics of painting with brushes and things I think will help you along the way, even if you're starting with a really tight budget, just like I did before. I won't be painting too much, if at all, and I'll just show you some basic concepts. Let's start already. So what I'm gonna start with is the brushes. So here I have a couple of brushes, and painting with brushes is different from painting with the markers I used before, mostly because it gives you access to a wider variety of tools and a wider variety of results. So when you're picking a brush, it will always depend on what the desired outcome is. Here I have four sample brushes I wanted to show you and tell you what I usually do just to have fun and enjoy the process. So first of all, if you want to buy expensive brushes, this is sort of an expensive brush. It's fine art for spots, and it's from a brand called Master's Touch. It's not a very expensive brand, but it's something that's higher quality. Actually, the brush tip, I don't know if you can see it, is considerably thinner, so it helps you get more details in what you're painting. But again, these are more expensive. These are not the highest quality brushes, mostly because when I invest in my hobbies, I invest to have fun and I don't invest to be the best at it. So if you want to invest in brushes, there are many YouTubers that dive into them for different styles, for different purposes, for different mediums. Uh, I just try to get some that are higher end that will help me on the longer run. But usually what I do is stick to cheap brushes. Just buy a bundle of cheap brushes because I'm just in these for to have fun. I got these for a couple of dollars. A huge variety, huge impact on, hey, maybe I messed up this brush because I'm just learning. With everything there's a learning curve, and it's important for you to consider your budget when you're starting so you don't get depressed. When I began in the painting hobby almost 10 years ago, I got a couple of brushes. This is what remains of them. They're a bit used and they're not well taken care of. So let me show you a couple of examples. These were way out of my budget when I started painting, and I thought, hey, I'm gonna make a huge investment, I'm gonna get some good quality brushes, but the hairs are splitting already. It's because I didn't know how to use them. I didn't know how to take care of them. I just left them here as an example. Have some other good, better brushes. Army Painter, they make decent quality brushes. Others will tell you in the internet there are better quality brushes like Saber brushes, which are much higher quality, and it will change the thickness of the tip. It will change how easy it is for the hairs to split, and it will also affect how much paint it absorbs, the quality of the lines you get. So that's what you're paying for actually, it's higher quality. And as I mentioned a lot of times and very frequently, I'm not in here for the highest quality. I'm here to enjoy the process, have fun, and I'm a bit careless sometimes. As you can see, my hands are all dirty. I'm careless. Yesterday I was trying to fix a printer and it was a mess. It was a whole mess. And my hands are stuck with a lot of printer paint. And because of that same reasons that sometimes I'm messy or I wasn't good, I didn't understand match when I began, I damaged these expensive brushes. And that's when I realized, hey, I shouldn't keep buying expensive brushes if I'm gonna keep destroying them. And that's what I recommend to everyone starting in the hobby. Start by messing it up with something you're not gonna regret messing up. So buy cheap brushes. You're just beginning. Be gentle with yourself, have fun, and don't try to buy the most expensive equipment right at once. So that's for brushes. You get a different variety. You can also be very smart about how you buy brushes. Sometimes when you're looking for some keywords or for some very specific traits on your brushes, you end up finding very specialized tools, and some other times you realize, hey, I don't need that to be that specialized. This is a clear example. So this is one of the brushes for very fine lines. This comparatively, if I compare it to this other brush I showed you before, let me see if I can, you can barely see the tip of this brush. That's on purpose. So it's very thin, very long, and if you're buying for painting high quality stuff, these are gonna be really expensive. But you have a cheap alternative, which is makeup brushes. Makeup brushes are fantastic for a lot of different reasons. This one, for example, is for nail art, and it works just fine. And that's what we need sometimes, because we're learning. Been doing this for a long time, but that doesn't mean I'm a professional or that I am an expert and I'm gonna get the best results with the best materials. No, and that's why having these materials to have fun and just have a good time is important. So that's it about brushes. Don't want to dig too much into details because there are many other YouTubers that dig into that. Moving on with painting with brushes is that you need paints. So in my case, I use acrylics. Acrylics come in different shapes, forms. They can come in large tubes, they can come in small ones, some are cheaper than others. The biggest difference would be the quality of the paints and the finish of the paints. So some can be more matte or opaque, some can be more shiny. Usually I try to use gaming paints, so these game paints. There are also other brands like Model Color. There's also Vallejo. I don't know if I have Vallejo. AK here, another brand. But there are many types of acrylic paints, and the difference is one, preference. A lot of people, because they have a lot of experience in the area, these companies have a lot of experience in the area making different colors, so they know how to work with them and they end up with great results. The biggest difference would be your preference, what you like best, the jar they come in. So for example, give me a second. These are the Citadel paints that come in a different jar, and the way you open it is you pop up the lid, but I don't like these jars because when you open it you have this, which is nice, where you can put the brush in, but as you can see there's a lot of paint drying at the edges, paint lost on here. So what I tend to do is I buy a couple of these cheap bottles. These are actually empty bottles. I pour it in with a funnel and then I have this. So now it's for drops. It's easier to apply for me and it's much faster. And when you're working on this hobby, when you're doing these things for fun, sometimes you don't have a lot of time, you don't want to waste materials. So having a dropper like this one helps you a lot, just to make it faster, make it easier on you and easier to store. You lose less material, so it lasts longer and it works for a longer time. So those are the main acrylics I use. As I mentioned before, you have other acrylics. So you have Liquitex, which is another great brand for artists. This one can be really cheap. You can get paints very cheap if you buy them online, if you go to garage sales. I got a pack of these at a garage sale for $5 and they work great for what I want, which is basic paints, acrylics. They will behave mostly the same, mostly if it's a good brand. If it's open, if it's from a different brand, they will work the same as long as you take care of them. Taking care of them is really simple. Just don't let them open. Open containers are the enemy of all these paints, so try to remember as soon as you open it and drop some paint, Just close the lid as tight as possible. Same with these ones, close them really tightly because air will dry out these paints. And the best example of taking care of your paints is what I just showed you actually, which is these paints. These paints I've had for 10 years. I have a lot of colors, so that's what I do. I just keep them and I don't need to buy new paints because they dried out, just because I'm trying to be careful with that. So just a mindful reminder, take care of your paints, take care of your materials. Unless, for example, with the brushes again, if you're using them just to have fun, you can buy cheap materials. Don't be afraid to waste them. One technique that a lot of people use when they buy something new is they sort of mess it up. So if you have a notebook, if you have anything, just scribble something really quick on top, which is what I did with some of the cards. It's just do it, because sometimes your biggest enemy is yourself, and you stop yourself from doing things just because you're afraid you're gonna mess it up. I'm guilty of that. A lot of people are actually. And my message to you is just give it a try. You're setting up yourself for failure if you're not even trying. So try your best, have fun with it, and keep moving forward. And talking about moving forward, now I'm gonna talk about where do we put these paints. So that is a very good question. A lot of people have different answers. When we were kids, most kids actually had something of a palette. Those typical plastic palettes that have the dimples. They were great for some paints, but if you want to be painting for a while, I'm talking about more than a couple of minutes, and you don't want the paints to dry out, you need a place to put them. So you can do something as simple as this. Just find a flat surface, put on some paint in there. Let's try this one. I recommend you shake them well before you apply them. So this one is very wet. I didn't shake it, so that's what happens. Just put it in there and start mixing with the brush. Again, these are really cheap brushes, so I'm not afraid to use them, waste them. They cost a couple of cents. I'm not gonna waste them. I'm gonna keep using it for a long time to come. But that's one approach you can have. The other approach, which I always prefer because it allows me to work more with the paint, is using a wet palette. So a wet palette is basically a container that has a sponge for moisture, the container here on the back, which is a plastic basically, and a surface that allows moisture to not go all the way through, just prevents it from moving, and for you to put the paint on top. So in this same case, I'm gonna shake this one. Oh, another tip. So when you have these paints, they can separate. I don't know if you can see this. This color is a bit separated, as you can see here, because it was leaning on the side. So you have layers that because of gravity, they start separating over time. Mostly if you have really old paints like I do, they tend to separate a lot. And this one, for example, is very liquidy on the top. I don't know if you can see it. But on the bottom, you can see a bit of the shift in color because I have them mostly in an inclination. So they end up forming these lines on the side. And what you do is you need to shake them. Shaking them, a bit tricky. You can get an expensive Vortex or get expensive machines. Just shake it with your hand. To give you a tip, put a metallic gear inside, which is a small metal ball. Let me see if I have some here. Yep, here we go. Some of this. So these are for paints. Basically, you can get some cheap ones on Amazon as well. Cheap ones are very available. They're just small metallic balls. What you do is you open the lid, remove this part, and pop one in. And that's all you need to do. You don't need to do anything else. Then close it, close everything, close the lid. And now when you're shaking the paint, the metallic ball is bouncing from one place to the other. So you shake it. I don't know if you can hear the rattling inside of that metallic ball. You can put 1, 2, however many you want. With some thicker paints, it takes a while, so this one is a thicker paint. So if I shake it, you barely hear it, but it's moving around. It's doing its job, which is shaking and mixing the paint inside, and you don't need an expensive machine or anything. If you want a tip, what I did was I went to a Goodwill store, secondhand store, bought a massager, and made an adapter. So it's basically using a massager to shake. Got one of these massagers, and basically what it does is that because it's vibrating, I don't know if you can see here, let's see. Oh, battery is drained. I should have charged it. So this moves back and forth, and when you put the paint in here, it has the same effect. It shakes back and forth, and that's it. You put your finger there, turn it on, and it starts vibrating. With any massager, actually, anything that helps you make it faster. Sometimes if you're a bit clumsy or your hands get tired and numb from shaking paint, that can help you. Okay, moving back to the wet palette. So the wet palette is very important. This is one of the investments I did a bit late in my painting journey, and I wish I had known sooner that there are cheap alternatives. First of all, using a dry palette still works great. It's not that it's bad, it's just that it's a slight improvement and makes your life easier. When you're mixing colors, when you're working with a lot of paints and you don't want them to dry. For example, if you're working with 10, 15 colors, and then when you go back to the first color, it's already dry. So that happened a lot. It's a lot of wasted paint, and I didn't have enough money to waste on paints. So I started digging, and wet palettes are the way to go for me. And this was not cheap. For me, as a student, I didn't have a job. I was studying, thankfully. My parents helped me a lot, but I didn't have an allowance when I was younger. So I had to figure out ways to make things cheap with stuff around the house. And one of the best things you can do is use a sponge. Just cut a rectangle, and then you use a bit of parchment paper, which is the film, and you use a lid. So same concept. You have the base, which contains the water. You have a sponge that retains the water inside in contact with a paper, which you use to put your paints on top. This is a small example of what I'm talking about. This is one of the boxes I get with cards when I buy them online. You can use the lid of a container, anything. I'm using this one just to show you, and because it has something really important that will be helpful for you if you want to keep using them. So what you do is, this is a container that's a bit thick. You put the sponge. You already saw the large sponge. Most of you will have some laying around in the house if you clean the dishes, or if you clean the bathroom, whatever, you're gonna have some sponges. So take a small cut, put it in there, and put some parchment paper on top. Once you have that ready, what you do is you put some water on it. I should do this in the bathroom before I put the water in, but it will work just as fine. So as you can see, the sponge in the back is absorbing a lot of the moisture. All the water we dropped in is being absorbed, and slowly it's finding its way through all the gaps. So slowly but surely it will become fully wet, and that's how you get a wet palette. So what happens, and the reason this works, is that moisture is trapped in the bottom and not in contact with your paints. So when you're painting and you leave your paints on top of here, the moisture from here moves through these layers and prevents the paint from drying out. because the paint is exposed to air and it starts drying out, losing moisture, and it solidifies. And that's when you get your finished layer of paint. It happens with all paints. This slows it down. It doesn't prevent it, it just slows it down. Now the next thing is a lid. So when I started, I was using an actual lid from a topper, disposable container, just a lid, and I did this same thing. But my paints, although it extended their lifespan, they did end up drying quick because I left them overnight, for example. I started one day, left them overnight, and they started drying out. So what you do is, you have this paint, shake it, be sure the ball is on the bottom. Sometimes when you're shaking and you have a sphere in the center, what will happen is that the sphere will get lodged near the top. And when that happens, if you start squeezing it, you generate a lot of pressure that will move the paint and will move the ball without paint coming out of the container. And what will happen if the sphere is here is that it will explode. So you'll have paint everywhere. Just be mindful of that. So here I'm gonna put some paint. Now, as I was mentioning before, one of the important things with a wet palette is that it helps you prevent it from getting dry. So if I paint here versus painting here, here it will dry much faster than in here. And that's the benefit. If you also want to start working, actually started separating because of the moisture inside, but same concept. This is almost dry already because I'm not working on it. So it's really dry. No, but it's also getting dry. And as you can see now, it's sticking. So that's the end of it. But here, you still have it moving all the way around. So it's working as you want it to. It's just moving moisture from the bottom to the top, so this doesn't become a solid. The importance of the lid is that it prevents air from flowing. So this one has this lid, it will make it stay longer. I recommend you check it out. Every now and then, don't leave it for a couple of weeks or months because it will still dry out. Same with this one. This one has a very simple lid. Just put it on top, pop it on top, and it will make your paints last longer. Take a break. That's easier for you. If you leave it open, the paints will dry anyways. So all the water can evaporate from this place. And the bigger you go, the more moisture you'll be able to absorb, the larger it will be, but also more space it will use in your desk. As you can see, this is actually a small one, just the size of my hand. This is a really small one, but it's good enough for what I'm doing. So pick a wet palette, it's gonna help you in the long run, and it's really useful for many things, and I'll show you some right now. So I'm gonna stop using this large one. It already served its purpose. And now with every wet palette, a really friendly reminder, keep water on your side. So you can put a glass, a mug, you can use an old jar of jam, you can buy one of these fancy ones that allows you to clean your brushes. Fancy because it's more fancy because it's expensive and it's from a brand, not because it's really different from this one. It has its ridges, but it's not really necessary. What I usually do is just keep a couple of toppers. So here with a lid, just so I don't spill them. A tip, I bought 3 small toppers. You can always use a large one, and that's gonna be good enough, but you most definitely will need to change the water every now and then. Because when you have paint in your brush, what ends up happening is that, oh yeah, I'm painting, whatever, I'm like, oh, I want to switch colors and I don't want to keep this paint. You put it in one of the jars and you can see that the water immediately turned this color. And then if you go back, it will retain some of it. And the more you use it, the darker it will get. What I do is I don't stick with one, I do it in stages. So this one first, a quick wash, general wash. Then I move on to a second stage that will also taint the water, but a bit less. You can barely see it as long as don't do it. And the third one is just the final cleanse of the brush, which again helps you have a clean brush in the end. So perfectly white, just taking care of them and making sure that what you're painting is what you want to paint. Then just remove the moisture from the brush. You can use the same sponges. I'm using this same sponge just to remove all the moisture from the brush, and you can start painting again. So now talking specifically about colors. So now talking about colors, what happens is you have different colors here. You have two colors. And you say, hey, I want to use these two colors. I want to be shifting back and forth between them, and they work great for what I want, but it's not exactly the color I need. Should I buy a new color for this different kind of shade? Well, yes and no. There comes a lot of theory in mixing colors, how it can help you reach the desired result. We have access to internet nowadays, so you can mix and match and find the colors you want, and along the way you will learn a lot. And when I started painting, I had all the range of colors with just 5 colors I had, because you mix them and you get different colors, different intensities for different purposes. And for that, 2 recommendations. 1, if you're removing paint from one of these jars that I showed you before, try to use a brush you don't care about because you can damage it. Secondly, put it in here and start in a different area mixing them, just so you have a base. So I'll grab some of this color, I'll grab some of this color and put it in between. And what I do is just start mixing with the same brush you don't care about. Just find this slot and see if that's the color you wanted. If that's the shade, fantastic. If not, I want it to be more close to this color. I again put it here on the side and start mixing upwards. Again, you can do it further down, and then you can go back up. If your brush starts getting painted with all those colors, it's still gonna mix, but now you know you have like a shift between this color and its original opposites. And then again, same as before, just clean it. The first greens over here, water really dirty already. The brush still retains some of the blue color. Now I give it a second wash. These washes, you can do it with tap water. I'm using tap water right now. Doesn't need to be anything fancy. Some of them you can use purified water. For example, if you're gonna do this setup or you use another setup, you can use purified water or a different solvent in the last one, just to make it perfectly clear. And what happens is that when you move through all these stages, you end up with a brush that is much cleaner. I don't know if you remember the contrast of color, it was more bluish when I brushed it in this one. That's because it absorbs the tint that's mixed in the water. If you're using just one large jar, every now and then empty it, because you're gonna have a lot of paint here. That's gonna mess up your results. So be mindful of that. Again, let me show you. I don't know if it's that noticeable, but here it absorbed some of the color, and it will happen even more when you use it further and further, just changing colors. So that's it for mixing colors. Now for getting the right consistency. If you have a paint that you want it to not be 3-dimensional, thin it down. Thinning it down means mix it with a bit more of water. So just use some water to mix it up and make it thinner. So usually paints are really thick, like this one. You can see that it's basically a blob hanging on top of the brush. It changes shape. It's not what you want if you want something that's thin. For example, when I'm painting these cards, if I'm gonna use them and I paint with something that's this thick, then the card is gonna have a bump. And I don't want that bump appearing there. because it will be really noticeable if you have it in a deck. And the other example is of why I don't want this bump is when I'm working with miniatures. For example, if I'm painting a miniature which has a lot of details, I don't know if you can see them, this is from a game, I don't remember which game, but it has a lot of details, really tiny details that are basically small hills where paint can accumulate, and if I fill them, and I fill those gaps, then I won't be able to see the details if I'm using paint that's this thick. So what you do is you take some water and thin it down. I'm gonna clean the brush. Okay, pat it dry. You also, when you're drying it, you're removing some of the pigments on the piece you're using. You can use paper towels, you can use these absorbent pads, you can use these sponges, dirty old towels, whatever you have at hand. And to thin it down, you take some water, just dip it a bit on water, and put some water here on the side, and start mixing. I don't know if you can see, but there the color feels different, and that's because it's pigment mixed with more water. So it happens that it's really thin down, and it's very watery. What happens with that is when you paint over something, let's say, let me get something to paint over. I'm gonna use my card holder. I use this to hold cards usually. So when you have a very thin paint, it's barely noticeable. That's because it's very transparent, it's mostly water, and paint is a bunch of pigments that are together. If you have more together, more dense, then the color sticks better. So if, again, in contrast, I go back and say like, no, I'm gonna use this as pure as it is. There you can see a noticeable difference on how you're painting. It's the same paint, it's just that one is watered down, the other isn't. This one you can see a bit through, this one much less. But the bad part is, let me see if I can. I think there you can see a bit of a bump in the paint. This one is gonna be really flat. This one, when it dries out, and if you use a blob of paint, it's gonna leave a bump. And that bump will make the details disappear or make it feel awkward when you're handling, for example, a card. In some cases, when you're painting on canvas, you want that texture, or you don't care, because you can paint right away from this. For the purposes of my painting, which is for playing cards, for example, for miniatures, as I showed you before, making it thick will also make it lose details or gain volume, which I don't want, for the reasons I said. So what I do, if I want pigment but I don't want it to be too thin, is they always say like milk consistency. I don't know what that means. I usually just go by feeling. Again, I'm not an expert, I'm not trying to be perfect, I'm just trying to get the result I want. So I keep mixing until I get something in the texture of, looks like water but really dark. It's like muddy water, a bit thicker. Milk is not the right word for me, mostly because I don't know how milk looks like when I'm painting with it, because I don't paint with milk. So if someone tells you that, okay, good for you. This one behaves more like paint from the color jar. This one behaves more like as if it was a cream, but a thin cream. You don't want a thick one, because then you get the same result. If you make it too thin with a lot of water, this happens. And when you make it thin enough, you're still gonna get a lot of pigment. It's gonna dry out a different color. You're still gonna get a lot of pigment, and what you do is you go layer by layer. The more you paint on top of the same paint, once it dries, the better. Now moving on to wet how wet mixing, I don't know the specific term, but it's something that you usually do with paints that are thicker. That it's a technique that's really useful when you're painting on canvas or when you want a gradient. So you start with a really thick paint, then you start with another paint, and when you meet them in the middle, because they are both really thick and wet, they can still be mixed. So you start blending them in. I don't know if you can see. So you can blend the paint while it's wet. So there you get a gradient. That's really useful for many cases. I don't like to do it here in the same canvas. I prefer to do it separately. Why? Because if I mess up, and I usually do, I sometimes want to go back and I say like, oh, I don't know, for example, here, like, oh, I like this color, I'm gonna mix it with this one, yeah. Does it look good? No, it doesn't look good for me, so I'm gonna go back, clean it off, and go back to the original color. And then I say, okay, if I mix it here, for example, I can go grab some of this paint that I wanted and add it here. And I say, oh no, I wanted it to be a bit more of this color. So this one got a bit dry, so I'm gonna wet it a bit. Wanted this color, so you start painting this color. And then you can go back and forth. When this dries, if you say like, oh no, I regret that decision. You can go back to the previous paint, and then you say, okay, I didn't want this one, I wanted something lighter. So you go back to this one, paint it all over, and it's like, oh no, I didn't want it. You can go back, and you don't need to mix it. You don't need to mix it live. Mixing it again and again can be messy. So when you're mixing and you're comfortable with the result, you know the color you want to get, mix a bit more, leave it as a reservoir, and use it whenever you want. So instead of having 2 colors, you have 3 colors that you can go back and forth with. If you want something in between, you want it more like this, just mix it over here, and it's gonna be different from this, it's gonna be lighter. Then you can start mixing other colors, and you have the difference in the palette of all the colors that you're using in general. So that's the gist of it. Have fun. And finally, when you have a brush, don't do what I do. I just mixed it all up with this brush because I don't care about it. If you do it with a brush you care about, you're gonna start messing it up because the paint starts accumulating at the end of it. So the paint starts accumulating here, and you end up with a mess. And you don't want to have a mess with your paint brushes. You want to at least maintain them for a while. So be mindful of that. Don't push paint. Even if you do this, paint sometimes can still stick in the bottom. Mostly if you're being painting, for example, you take a brush of this and paint a lot. That will give it enough time to dry. So when you put it in the water, it's not gonna dry. It's not gonna be coming off. So be mindful of that. As I promised also, so you can see when you're mixing and cleaning your brushes, it will become darker. This one not that much because it's the 3rd stage. So you always end up with a brush that it's gonna be almost like new. And that's the general of wet palettes, brushes, paints. This also applies for other canvases, other mediums, other materials. This is a very generic approach. You can use oils, you can use other materials that will definitely change the techniques you're using. But as I encourage everyone, just have fun with the process, enjoy it. Whatever makes you paint, whatever makes you do something creative, just do it. Doesn't need to be perfect, doesn't need to be a professional grade finish. I always look at YouTubers and it's like, oh wow, that's fantastic. But you always have this nagging moment when you think like, oh, but I won't be able to do that. I won't be able to replicate it because he's an expert, I'm not. And you stop doing it. Or the other extreme is, which I've gone through both, is you do something and you compare yourself to them and you're like, oh, I suck at this hobby, it's not for me, and then you stop it. And that's usually because you're comparing yourself to someone that's on a different standard. They're doing it for show, I'm doing it for show, and I try to be as original as possible, like not many tweaks, just keep it fast and simple. And other professionals don't do that. They pick their best work, they pick like all the best materials, the best techniques, unless they're doing something very specific, like, oh look, these are the top 10 things you shouldn't do. But in general, don't compare yourself to others. Compare yourself to the past you. So the you of today is different from the you of yesterday and different from the you of tomorrow. Don't compare yourself to others. Enjoy the process, have fun with it, and just do it. Just do it. Don't stay in the couch watching TV all day, every single day. There are many things you can try. You can read and you say, oh, but I'm a slow reader. I'm a really slow reader. But grab that book. Grab a comic book if you prefer pictures, like I do. Instead of reading a normal book, I read a comic book because that's what I prefer. Just do it. Get out of the monotony. If you say like, oh, I want to paint, don't sit there watching a billion YouTube videos on how to be a professional. Just do it. Just get up, get some paints, put something on the canvas and get inspiration. Like here, these couple of random lines, what are they? I don't know what they are, but they could be something fun. They could become something fun. And that's up to me to make it something that I really enjoy. So I can start sketching with the brush. This again, cheap brush. I am messing up this brush completely by doing this because this is not made for that. And that's why I get a lot of cheap brushes, because sometimes I am messy. Sometimes I don't like following even my own rules and I do something different and I can mess it up. So just be aware that whatever you're doing, have fun with it, let it roll. It's a journey. It's not only a destination, it's not only where you're getting at, it's also how much fun you had while doing it. So here I'm doing something that makes no sense except for me in my mind, and that's okay. It's for me to enjoy, not for others to enjoy sometimes, and that's fine. When you're doing things for yourself, that's what matters the most. So you just keep on painting. So this is now a small character. And what you can do is just keep on adding details just for fun. I spent a couple of minutes doing this, yes. Is it perfect? Definitely not. Is it something beautiful? Again, no. I'm not a professional artist. I don't know how to freehand paint by imagination that well because I haven't practiced that much. Actually, that's something I want to show you further down the road. It's how I try new things and how you can be bad at it. You can be awful, be the worst painter ever, for example, and still enjoy it, still have fun. Just keep it going, keep it happening, because if you decide to stop before it starts, you don't get to enjoy it. And that's the beauty of it. You need to enjoy these things, enjoy the little things, have fun, enjoy the process. And that's my message for today. Thank you so much for watching. Hope to catch you on my next video. I'm also gonna be painting and I'm gonna be using the brushes that I showed you with more detail on how you're painting, some commentary on techniques, whatnot. So thank you again. Please leave a comment, subscribe if possible. And thank you all for watching. Hope you stick around. There's so much more to come. There are so many hobbies I would like to show you. Painting is just the first one. Thank you again. Have a great week.